Hey everyone, so for today I'm going to be recording a video going over the alert feature in HeatSeeker. First, just going over how it works, the functionality, and at the end I'll give a couple tips and onto how I would use it and how I have it set up when I do choose to use it. So yeah, first to start, the alert tab, whether you have the pane open or not, is this little light bulb emoji. Or if you have this open, it's just where it says alerts, right? So if you go over to this light bulb, you'll pull up this page where it's basically going to give you all the alerts you have configured, whether you have them on or not. And obviously you can go and edit them, throw them away, and also look at the history, which is going to have every alert you had have turned on. It's going to show you which one's triggered, for what ticker, what ticker, what time, what node got triggered, and at what price it was at, right? And what the distance from the node was, which will make a bit more sense as I go through this video. So yeah, we can just go straight into it. You can also filter this list based on, if they're enabled on or off, and then based on the type of node you're trying to um, get alerted for, right? So I'll start with the create alert feature. So there's two ways you can handle this. You can either come in here, input a specific ticker that you're looking for, or just make a list, right? If you start, if you want to look at a few different ones, you can just build out your list here. The other thing you can do is if you already have an existing watch list, just from maybe a watch list you created for tickers you like to scan the heat maps for, or just like if you have a batch of tickers that you typically trade, you can come here and just go ahead and select that watch list, right? So yeah, make sure you know the name of whatever watch list you have if you have it built just in the general Heatseeker website, and you can go ahead and pull that in here. So yeah, name it whatever you may need. Now, getting into the actual settings, right? You're gonna have a few different types of um, nodes that you can be alerted to, right? So if you want to get alert from the king node, which is just going to be your strongest volume node, absolute value, whether it's positive or negative, the strongest node will you'll get an alert if you select the king node. If you go to significant node, what's going to happen here is you can basically specify what are the top number of nodes that you want, right? So, if you want just the king node, you'd be specifying one, because significant node is just looking at what is the volume, right? So if you want to look at the top three nodes in volume, regardless of their sign, so whether they're positive or negative, you can just select three, and this is going to monitor those top three at the moment, right? Um, and it goes up to 10 again. And if you have this at one, you're basically just getting the same as king node, right? Then we have Pico node is going to be showing us, I believe, the top three positive gamma nodes, right? So, or positive volume. Now, so typically these will be yellow on the map. Not always. If we look at the heat map, sometimes these will actually show up as green, just depending on how the difference between the strongest and the second, third strongest, right? But yeah, after pick a node, you have Barney, which is the same just for negative, right? So showing you the strongest negative. Again, this will typically be purple, is why it's called Barney, but a lot of times, there are times that it can show up bluish. So, um, okay, after that, you have the gatekeeper node, which is showing you basically any node that is 25% of the king node. And you'll go ahead and get that alert if the absolute value of the volume is 25% of king node. And then finally, you just have custom price. I wouldn't use this feature at all at this point. You might as well just set an alert on TradingView or Webull, Robinhood Legend, Thinkorswim, whatever, wherever you chart. Um, but you're welcome to do so if you'd like. Okay, now for all of these settings, right, you can also specify if you want Gex or Vex. I typically leave it to Gex just because on the short term, that's what you're more interested in, right? Like even if you're playing a long-term option, you're more interested in where are we actually going to bounce off of on the short term, and then you use the Vex sort of as your confirmation of your bias of whatever the length of the trade is, right? Um, but you're also welcome to look at it on the Vex. But I would say that the Gex is definitely going to be more useful on this. Okay, so now that you know what you're actually looking for, right? What kind of node you're looking for, what's going to matter now is when do you get alerted to it, right? So there's a few options here. You have proximity, touch, cross, and reversal. Proximity is just going to be as we approach a node, right? So as we approach a node, you're then going to use this threshold type, these options, and you have two options, right? You can either specify a point value. So let's say you want to be looking at when we approach, let's say within 5 points of the king node of SPX, right? So you'd be showing here and you just put in here, okay, here's how many dollars away that I want to be interested in, right? If you prefer to be notified a little closer to the level itself, you can also, you can shift this level as much as you want. Um, Now, I will say if you have a watch list, especially if you have a watch list, the points approach is a little risky because if you have Costco and let's say Rigetti, right? So you have a ticker that's near $1,000 and you have Rigetti that's down near 20, right? And if you put just the general points value for both, obviously it's going to be a huge difference, right? Rigetti, you're going to be getting alerted all the time for no reason. Whereas Costco, 5 points is actually reasonable, right? In terms of overshoot or if we bounce early, etc. So either you can make your watch list separated a bit by like the price of the ticker itself, or you can swap over to a percentage-based approach, right? And just calculate, okay, 5 points on SPX is roughly how much percent, and then just go ahead and input that here. So this will be a bit better if you're dealing with a watch list that has many different prices of tickers, right? Like a very wide range of the cost of the actual stock. But if they're all within the same ballpark, then you can just use points. That'll be a little bit easier to think. So you don't have to go calculate the percentage. Okay. So that's proximity. Obviously, touch is just if we tap the level itself. So it's just, okay, if we go tap on the dot, then you'll get alerted, right? I actually typically use touch alerts because it just reduces the amount of alerts that I get, right? A lot of times with the proximity, you're getting alerted, as you get pretty close. And then depending on some of the other settings, which I'll explain in a second, you may be getting alerted again and again and again if price is hovering within, or if price is hovering in a range near that node. Okay, and then the last two is you have cross, right? So it's as price passes through the node. So it's a bit of so this cross and reversal is a bit more of like, these are more lagging indicator, right? So when we actually cross through the node, then you get alerted. Whereas reversal, once there's a bit of a reaction away from that node, then you go ahead and get alerted. Okay, so that'll be the trigger types. The last thing I'll say here is the alert mode. So you have continuous single fire debounced. Continuous, I would highly recommend you turn this off because it'll just sort of nonstop keep flagging. Obviously, if you have a watch list of 20 tickers and you have continuous on, like you could be dealing with a lot of notifications. So I prefer to do either single fired or debounced. Now with single fire, that's the one I like the most just because it reduces the number of notifications. The bounce is good, but I would really bump up the cooldown, right? Because if you're doing it every 5 minutes, and you have a watch list of 20 tickers, that still can be a lot of alerts. So if you move this up to like half an hour or a full hour, then this one makes a bit more sense. Um, but again, like the thing with these alerts is you can get just a lot of them, right? Depending on how big your watch list is. So to keep things low in terms of notification count, I'd really recommend you swap to touch. But the big thing is going to be swapping to single fire, right? So once you get the alert once, you can put your attention to that ticker, the chart and the heat map, and then that should really be all you need, right? There's really no need to have it be debounced. Um, so that'd be my recommendation in terms of how I'm setting the trigger type, the alert mode. I almost always will use significant nodes, and I'll put just two or three here. Now, the reason for that is sometimes our king node is not actually the level that we bounce off of. Sometimes it's the target we're going towards. So if I know, many tickers will bounce off their second or third strongest node and then push towards a king node. So that's the reason that I will typically always use significant nodes and then put in two or three, right? So I don't put in 4 to 5 just because it gives me too much spam of alerts. So 2 to 3, I find that keeps it pretty minimal, along with touch trigger and single fire alert, right? Now the trigger type I would this one can be changed, right? So like if you're going to proximity, I think that's fine. I prefer to enter. I prefer to wait for full taps of levels. That's just my style. But if you're someone who, if you like to have your eyes on it a little bit beforehand, have a bit of time to interpret what's going on in the chart, what's going on in the heat map, and just double check all of those things, then I'd probably put a bit of a buffer there with the proximity trigger condition. Um, the other thing I'll say overall about these alerts is if this is a ticker that you're looking at frequently already, like if you chart it already a couple times a week, 3 times a week, there's not much value in using the alerts. So the alerts is most useful, one, if you're mostly trading indexes and you're just not able to keep an eye on a lot of these individual tickers that you're interested in. Or perhaps, due to other commitments, family, work, whatever it may be, if you're just not able to sit on screen very long, right? And you just want a way of, okay, when we do hit a significant level, I just want to get pinged, and then I can spend 3 to 5 minutes checking it out in the moment, but it's not something that I want to be, flipping through all my watch list all day, right? So that's the way I would recommend to use it. But and that's the current iteration of how these work. In the future, there will be some additions into other things you can sort of screen for or get alerted for, but at least right now, this is where it sits. And yeah, so hopefully this is helpful for anyone new and wanting to use this feature. All right, bye.